At my brother's wedding, I found my seat, a fold-up chair behind the DJ booth. His bride sneered, "You should be grateful we even let you come." My dad just laughed. "It's not like you're important." I picked up my gift, smiled, and said, "You're right. I'll take back what I brought." I should have seen it coming. The signs were there for years, painted in every family gathering, every holiday dinner, every moment where I was somehow always the afterthought. But standing in that decorated hotel ballroom, staring at a cheap fold-up chair wedged behind the DJ's equipment table, while everyone else sat at elegant round tables with centerpieces and proper place settings, something finally clicked into place. The wedding had been planned for 8 months. 8 months of my brother's engagement to a woman who looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. 8 months of my parents gushing over every detail, every decision, every expensive choice they were helping to fund. And in all that time, nobody thought to mention where exactly I'd be sitting. I arrived at the venue with my girlfriend, both of us dressed well, carrying a gift that had cost me more than I wanted to admit. We'd pooled our money for a high-end espresso machine I knew my brother wanted, the kind with all the bells and whistles. The box was heavy and wrapped in expensive paper. My girlfriend had spent an hour making the bow perfect. The reception hall was already filling up when we walked in. I watched other guests finding their names on the seating chart, laughing and chatting as they located their tables. I found my name too. Table DJ. I actually laughed at first, thinking it was some kind of joke, maybe a typo. Then an usher confirmed it, pointing toward the back corner where the DJ was setting up his equipment. That's where I met her, my soon-to-be sister-in-law, in her elaborate white dress that probably cost more than my car. She was directing staff, clipboard in hand, every inch the demanding bride. When she saw me standing there with the gift, confused, she walked over with this smile that didn't reach her eyes. She told me the seating was intentional, said they had limited space at the proper tables and needed to prioritize important people. Family friends, business connections, people who mattered. Then she actually said it, told me I should be grateful they even let me come. Said it like she was doing me this enormous favor by allowing me to attend my own brother's wedding. I stood there, gift still in my hands, trying to process what I was hearing. My girlfriend's hand tightened on my arm. I could feel her anger radiating off her in waves, but she stayed quiet, waiting to see how I'd handle it. Before I could respond, my father appeared. He must have noticed the commotion, or maybe he'd been hovering nearby, waiting to see my reaction to their little surprise. He clapped me on the shoulder with this jovial laugh that made my stomach turn. He said it wasn't like I was important anyway, that I should just be happy to be included. Said my brother had a lot of significant people in his life, and they needed to accommodate them properly. The noise of the reception faded into background static. I looked at my father, really looked at him, and saw the same dismissive expression that had been there my whole life. The same look when I graduated college, and he couldn't be bothered to attend. The same look when I got my first real job, and he asked when I was going to do something that mattered. The same look every single time I tried to earn his approval and failed. I glanced over at the fold-up chair behind the DJ booth. It wasn't even properly set up, just leaning against the wall. No table, no place setting, just a chair in a dark corner where I could be technically present but completely invisible. Something in me went very calm and very cold. I smiled at my father, then at the bride. I told them they were absolutely right. I wasn't important. I didn't matter. So it really didn't make sense for me to take up any space at all, even a fold-up chair in the corner. I held up the gift and said I'd be taking back what I brought since they clearly had everything they needed without me. The bride's face went white, then red. She started saying something about overreacting, about not being dramatic, but I was already turning away. My girlfriend was already beside me, and we walked toward the exit together. Behind us, I heard my father calling my name. Not worried, not apologetic, just annoyed that I was making a scene. I heard the bride's voice getting shrill, something about the gift being rude, about ruining her day. I kept walking. We got to the parking lot, and my girlfriend asked if I was okay. I told her I was better than okay. I was done. She hugged me, told me she was proud of me, and we loaded the expensive espresso machine back into my trunk. We drove to a nice restaurant instead, one with cloth napkins and good wine. We had a proper dinner, just the two of us, and it was better than any wedding reception could have been. My phone started buzzing halfway through the meal. My mother, at first, then my father again, then my brother. I turned it off and ordered dessert. The messages started coming through email when they couldn't reach my phone. My mother said I'd embarrassed the family. My father said I was being childish. My brother said I'd humiliated his wife on her special day. Not one of them mentioned the chair. Not one of them acknowledged what they'd done. I didn't respond to any of them. I went home, my girlfriend stayed over, and we spent the rest of the weekend pretending my family didn't exist. It was peaceful. Monday morning, I went to work like normal. I was a software engineer at a decent company, nothing flashy, but stable and well-paying. I was good at my job. My coworkers respected me. My boss valued my work. It was strange, realizing that strangers treated me better than my own blood. The calls continued through the week. My mother tried the guilt angle, talking about family and forgiveness, and how I only had one brother. I finally answered and told her I also only had one self-respect, and I was choosing to keep it. She didn't like that answer. My brother called and actually tried to apologize, sort of. He said maybe the seating arrangement had been poorly thought out, but I shouldn't have made such a dramatic exit. He said his wife was hurt by my actions. I asked him how he would feel if the situation was reversed, if he'd been given a fold-up chair behind the DJ booth at my wedding while being told he should be grateful to attend. He went quiet, then said it wasn't the same thing. I asked him why not. He couldn't answer. His wife got on the phone then. She was crying, telling me I'd ruined the happiest day of her life. She said people had asked questions, that my empty chair in the corner had become a topic of conversation. She said my leaving with the gift had been noticed, and now people thought they were having financial problems or that there was some family drama. I told her there was family drama, but it wasn't new and it wasn't my responsibility to hide it. She hung up on me. My father sent an email. It was long and full of disappointment. He talked about family loyalty and respect for elders and how I'd always been difficult. He said I needed to apologize to my brother and his wife, return with an even better gift to make up for my behavior, and promise to never embarrass the family like that again. I deleted the email without responding. 3 weeks after the wedding, my brother showed up at my apartment. He looked tired, worn down in a way I'd never seen him before. He said his wife wouldn't let it go, that she brought it up constantly, that his honeymoon had been ruined by her obsessing over my empty chair. He asked what it would take for me to apologize. I invited him in and made coffee. We sat at my kitchen table, and I asked him a question I'd never asked before. I wanted to know when exactly I'd become invisible to our family. Was it gradual, or was there a specific moment? He looked confused, tried to say I wasn't invisible. So I listed examples. My college graduation that neither parent attended because they were at his high school baseball tournament. My first apartment that nobody helped me move into while they'd thrown him a housewarming party when he got his place. Every birthday dinner that got rescheduled around his convenience. Every holiday where my achievements were glossed over while his were celebrated. The time I was in the hospital with appendicitis and nobody visited because they were at his girlfriend's family barbecue. He sat there, coffee getting cold in his hands, and I watched realization dawn on his face. He tried to argue at first, tried to justify things, but the excuses sounded weak even to him. Finally, he asked why I'd never said anything before. I told him I had, multiple times, but I'd been told I was being sensitive, that I was imagining things, that I needed to be more understanding of everyone else's busy schedules. So eventually I stopped saying anything and just accepted my role as the forgettable son, the unnecessary brother. He asked what I wanted from him. I told him I didn't want anything anymore. That was the point. I was done wanting their approval, their attention, their basic acknowledgement. The wedding had just been the final, perfect illustration of what I'd already known. I wasn't part of their family in any meaningful way, and trying to force myself into that space was only hurting me. My brother left looking shell-shocked. He said he'd talk to our parents, try to make them understand. I told him not to bother. They'd had 32 years to understand. I wasn't holding my breath for a sudden epiphany. 2 months after the wedding, the holidays started approaching. My mother called to discuss Thanksgiving plans. She talked about the menu and the guest list and who was bringing what. She assigned me a dish to bring, some complicated side that nobody really liked but that I apparently made well. Then she mentioned the seating arrangement, how they'd make sure I had a nice spot at the table this time, like she was doing me a favor. I told her I wouldn't be coming. She laughed, thinking I was joking. When I didn't laugh with her, silence stretched between us. She asked what I meant, her voice going sharp. I explained that I was spending holidays with my girlfriend's family from now on. They'd invited me. They actually wanted me there. and they had a real chair at a real table with my name on it. My mother's voice went cold. She said I was being manipulative, using holidays as leverage to get attention. She said families had disagreements, but we moved past them. I told her this wasn't a disagreement. This was me finally accepting reality and adjusting my expectations accordingly. She said if I didn't come to Thanksgiving, I shouldn't bother coming to Christmas either. I said that was fine. She hung up. Thanksgiving at my girlfriend's parents' house was warm and chaotic and welcoming. They asked about my work, my hobbies, my opinions on things. They laughed at my jokes. They included me in conversations. They had a seat at the table with a proper place setting and my name on a little handwritten card. I almost cried looking at it. My girlfriend's mother noticed me staring at the name card. She asked if something was wrong. I told her nothing was wrong. Everything was exactly right. She squeezed my hand and told me I was always welcome in their home. I believed her. Christmas came and went without a word from my family. My girlfriend and I spent it with her family again, and they gave me actual thoughtful gifts. Things that showed they'd paid attention to who I was. A book by an author I'd mentioned liking. A nice set of tools for my hobby of building computers. A framed photo of my girlfriend and me from a hiking trip we'd taken. I gave them gifts too, things I'd chosen carefully. We had a real celebration with real warmth. New Year's Eve, my brother called. He sounded drunk. He said his marriage was falling apart. His wife constantly compared him to her friends' husbands, constantly wanted more, constantly complained about everything. He said he was exhausted and he missed when things were simpler. He asked if I remembered when we were kids and we'd been close. I did remember. We'd been friends once, before everything got competitive, before our parents started comparing us, before he became the golden child and I became the invisible one. I asked him why he was really calling. He admitted he was jealous. Said my girlfriend seemed genuinely happy with me, that I'd seemed peaceful at Thanksgiving when he'd driven past and seen me through the window of her parents' house. He said he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt peaceful. I told him I couldn't fix his marriage. I told him the peace he'd seen came from finally stopping the chase for approval that would never come. He asked if I hated him. I said I didn't hate anyone. I was just done auditioning for a role I was never going to get. He cried then, actually cried on the phone. He said he was sorry about the wedding, about the chair, about everything. He said he'd been so caught up in being what everyone expected that he'd forgotten to question whether those expectations made sense. I told him it wasn't too late for him to figure out who he actually wanted to be, but he'd have to do that work himself. We hung up and I felt lighter somehow. Not because I'd forgiven everyone or because everything was fixed, but because I'd finally accepted that it was okay to walk away from people who didn't value me, even if we shared DNA. Spring arrived, and with it came news through extended family that my brother's marriage was indeed ending. His wife had found someone richer, someone more connected, someone who could give her the lifestyle she felt she deserved. The divorce was messy and expensive. My parents were devastated, not about my brother's pain, but about the embarrassment and the money they'd wasted on the wedding. My brother called me again. He asked if he could crash at my place for a while, just until he got on his feet. I thought about it for a long time before answering. I thought about the chair behind the DJ booth, about my father's laugh, about years of being invisible. But I also thought about the crying drunk man on the phone at New Year's, about the kid he used to be before everything got twisted. I told him he could stay in my guest room for 2 months, maximum. I told him there would be rules. He'd respect my space, my girlfriend, and my boundaries. He'd contribute to groceries and utilities. And he'd be in therapy, because he clearly had things to work through. He agreed to everything. Living with my brother was strange at first. We were like strangers relearning each other. But slowly, carefully, we started talking. Real conversations about real things. He admitted he'd always felt pressure to be perfect, to be the son our parents wanted. He said it had been exhausting and hollow. I told him about feeling erased, about learning to build a life around that absence. One evening, about 6 weeks into his stay, our parents showed up unannounced. They'd come to convince my brother to reconcile with his wife, to save face, to preserve appearances. They barely acknowledged me in my own apartment. I watched my brother for his reaction. He told them no. He said he was done living for their approval. He said the marriage had been a mistake built on all the wrong foundations, and he wasn't going to perpetuate it just to make them comfortable. My father's face went red. My mother started crying. They both turned to me, like I was somehow responsible for poisoning my brother against them. I stayed calm. I told them I'd built a good life without them, that I was happy and successful and surrounded by people who valued me. I told them my brother was figuring out his own path now, and it wasn't my job or theirs to dictate what that looked like. I told them they were welcome to leave since we had nothing more to discuss. My father started to argue, but my brother stood up. He backed me up, told our parents that I was right, that they needed to go. They left angry and bitter, and my brother and I sat in the quiet apartment afterward. He thanked me. I told him we were finally even. He moved out after the agreed-upon 2 months into his own small place. We stayed in touch, meeting for lunch sometimes, texting occasionally. It wasn't the close relationship we'd had as kids, but it was honest and real in a way nothing with my family had been for years. My girlfriend and I got engaged. We planned a small wedding, intimate and meaningful. When it came to the guest list, I hesitated over my family's names. My girlfriend asked what I wanted to do. I invited my brother. Just him. My parents weren't on the list. The wedding was perfect. Small and genuine, and full of people who actually cared about us. My brother gave a speech about second chances and finding your way back to the people who matter. He never mentioned our parents, never talked about our past. He just celebrated our future. At the reception, my brother pulled me aside. He said he understood now why I'd walked out of his wedding. He said if he could do it over, he'd have noticed that chair behind the DJ booth and raised hell before I ever saw it. I told him we couldn't redo the past, but we could learn from it. He hugged me, a real hug, and I realized we'd finally found our way to something like brotherhood. My parents sent a card. No gift, just a card with a generic congratulations message and a note about how hurt they were to be excluded. I filed it away and didn't respond. Some relationships aren't meant to be fixed. Some distances are necessary and healthy. Years later, I sometimes think about that fold-up chair. I think about how a single moment of clarity can change everything. I walked away from that wedding and toward a life where I actually mattered, where my presence was wanted, my contributions valued, my existence acknowledged. I built a family from choice rather than obligation, and that family was better than anything biology had given me. The chair was never the real problem. It was just the symbol of everything wrong that I'd been too afraid to confront. Taking back that gift was the first time I'd ever taken back my power from people who'd held it too long. And it turned out that power looked a lot like peace, like happiness, like a life lived on my own terms. I don't regret walking out. I regret all the years I didn't.